Well, hello everybody. We're back to do another quick video lecture. Hope that you've enjoyed these so far. I know I've had some difficulty with some of them and they weren't timely because of computer problems. We're hoping that we have that corrected now. Seems to be working a lot better. What we're going to be talking about this time is the Property 5 area, which is easements. When we deal with an easement, you think of the right of one person to be allowed to use another person's property. This usually comes up, for example, you've got two adjoining owners and there's only one driveway, and the driveway kind of runs equally down through both properties. So let me put these here. I've talked a little bit about this, I think, in a prior class. And here's house 1, and here's house 2, and here's garage 1, and here's garage 2. And so this is the driveway. It comes up like this. And notice that it's split between the two property lines. And so both parties need to have access to that. Well, there was a case where, what happens is this owner gives an easement to this owner. Okay, so A gives an easement to B, and then B gives an easement to A. But there was a guy, stubborn, kind of a mean old guy, that was living on this side, and he refused to honor that easement. And in fact, like I think I've mentioned this before, but he parks his truck like right in here, and so, that was a real disadvantage for this lady because she couldn't get her car in her garage, so that was a real problem. And so she would call the police, and they would come out and say, well, it's a civil case, we don't really know what to tell you, and so forth. So this can become a problem. A lot of times it does come up. And so when an easement is created for the benefit of a particular tract of land, it's called an appurtenant easement. Appurtenant. Okay, so we have appurtenant, that's A-P-P, appurt, okay, and then to make sure I spell it right, tenant, appurtenant. Now, what does this sound a lot like? Sounds like tenant, okay, appur. So it'd be like, like favorable, let's say to tenant, okay, and so the tenant is actually the user, okay. Is another word for him would be grantee. Okay, and that's going to come up again. So B is a grantee of A. Okay, I'm just going to put G of A, and B is the grantor of A, and A is the grantor of B, and A is the grantee of B. Okay, are we all understanding each other? So in other words, we got a grantor and a grantee because they gave each other a joint easement where they can each go up and down here and drive, and it is kind of a necessity because they're not going to get to their garage any other way, okay? Now a license, on the other hand, is where, let's say a farmer has a nice pond, and okay, he's got a farm, obviously, and somebody's son says, hey, I'd like to fish, and I'd like the chance to fish on your land. And I actually had a friend like that. He had kind of a ranch style home here, big property like this, okay, and then he had this pond out here in back, and actually there were several guys at my church that had a pond like this, and so he had a garage back in here like this, and then this was his house here, And so this is what we would call, this guy can come up on here and go over here and go fishing, So he had a license to fish, okay? Now, he didn't really have a license to do anything else up on there, just to fish, okay? And then that was an oral license, okay? That was not in writing. It's not required to be in writing in any way, because it's just an understanding between one family and another family that says it's okay. And so, that's another thing. Okay, so let us say that, he wants to bring a friend up on there. Well, he can't bring a friend up on there unless it gets cleared by the homeowner, okay? So you can't just start walking all your friends back in here, or just tell them, hey, go out there and fish anytime. The licensee does not have the authority. So this is the licensor, so we put that as lor, and this is the licensee, okay? And so they receive the individual personal right to go up on there. Or maybe the licensor says, your family can go up on there. Okay, so the guy, his dad, his uncle, all family, they can go up on there. But you can't bring, Charlie's off ox. What if this guy says, well, I'll let you go fishing up there for $25. Well, he can't, because it's not that kind of a license, okay? So that can be a problem. And stuff like this comes up all the time in the law, believe me. Okay, now, an easement in gross, I'm going to give you an example of that. Let us say that this guy's got a 40-acre farm, okay? This is 40 acres, okay? Here's his house, here's a barn, and here's like another outbuilding. And he's got a driveway that comes in here like this. And he basically agrees to sell an easement in gross to the light company. And they're building electric lines across there, okay? Now if this is an easement in gross, there's no specifications. Like I was saying to you on the license, there are no specifications as well. You can only put electricity through here, okay? Now, what happens if you've sold this guy an easement and the gas company wants to come along, and I'm going to put a different kind of a line here, and run a gas line through here. They can do it, okay? So this one here is a gas line, okay? Because, here again, it's an easement in gross, okay? And what that means is it's one company can use it, another company can use it. Okay, so that's important. Another thing is appurtenant easements can be transferred. So let's go to an appurtenant easement again, and we'll talk about. Let's just say it's not a complex one like the two neighbors, like we said. Let us just say that this guy's got a property, and it's shaped like this, okay? And this guy has a property, and it's shaped like this, okay? But what the deal is he's got this building that's kind of like right up, kind of hugging the line, and the garage door is like here, okay? But this is real woolly in here. It's got lots of trees. In order to put a driveway in there, he's going to have to cut down a lot of trees. That'd be very expensive. So what he does, he goes to his neighbor and says, how about if I give you $500 and I just get the right to put a driveway on this edge right here. Okay? All right. So, this is A, and he's the grantor of this easement, and this is B, and he's the grantee, okay? And I'm just putting G and Gore, okay? and that's grantor, grantee. Okay, so B is the grantee. He's got an appurtenant easement because it runs right along this guy's line and it's favorable to him. Okay, well, the thing on this is what ends up happening is that this guy can sell his property to C, okay, and what goes with that? That appurtenant easement goes with it, so I'm calling that AE, okay? So he can do that, okay? So you can transfer your rights to an appurtenant easement, like if you sold your property to somebody, well, they're going to have some way to get in that barn or garage, and if they have to go through like a gully and a bunch of trees and all this kind of stuff, that could be very difficult. So they're going to allow them to do that. Well, the next thing I'm going to talk about is merger, okay? And so what ends up happening, let us say that the grantee goes back to the grantor and says, hey, you know, this is a nice area, we really like it, I came into some inheritance money, and I want to move over and I want to just buy this whole area here, including that easement. And A says, well, you know, that's really not a problem for me because my driveway faces this other road over here. I really don't have any use for that. It's really kind of a pain to keep that up. So yeah, I'll sell it. Let's say I sell it to you for $5,000, okay? Well, this is what we call merger then. Okay, so in other words, this guy, B, actually owns this whole thing now, okay? Well, when he bought the land, you know, in other words, he now owns the appurtenant easement too. So that easement is just basically kind of extinguished by the fact of merger and that it's all kind of gone in together, okay? And that's an important thing to consider is that sometimes when you have what this is called like the dominant and this is the servient, or it's the other way around actually, I'm sorry. This is the dominant because they're getting to use this. This is the servient because he's allowing him to use it, okay? So basically what ends up happening then is that, in other words, this is all merged together, so that's where this word comes up, okay? Now, we're going to hit a couple more, some examples real quick. Hopefully we'll get through this. I've been finding out some of these are a little bit too long, so that's a big part of our problem. One thing to know that a perpetual easement is created and that is in the form of a prescriptive easement. And what is a prescriptive easement? Well, prescriptive easement, here again you got these two owners of these two lots, okay? And again, this guy's got like a bunch of stuff here and he's trying to get him to sell him an easement, and either the guy's never home or he can't get a straight answer out of him and stuff, but yet he still needs that easement. So finally he just starts driving his car like this around, okay? And that's nice hard ground there and there's no trees. It was a farm field, but the guy's just using it as grass now. So he's driving across that guy's lawn. And he does that for a prescribed period. That's where prescriptive comes in. And so what that means is once that guy gets through all the requirements, which this is again the more or less implied easement that starts to happen right here, is this guy is the dominant tenement, okay, and this guy is the servient tenement, okay? And so what ends up happening is he does that for, you know, follows all the rules which vary from state to state, and now basically he owns an easement. And I'll tell you, the thing about it is, like we said, it is perpetual, meaning it goes on and on and on. This land can always use this driveway, okay? So it's pretty important, you know, that if you don't want that to happen, you've got to kind of keep an eye on it. And if you're like an absentee owner, this can be a really, really bad problem. Okay, now, a pertinent easement, again, what we need to stress on that, has to benefit the other property. Okay, so if it has no benefit to somebody, it's just an easement there. That's usually what we call an easement in gross. Okay, and so another thing is that, you know, like this guy can't grant him his own easement and say, okay, well, or he can't say, okay, Joe, you can drive through there too, because you'll want to park your car back here. We're going to have a cookout. Well, he can't do that. Can't do it. The only one that can do it is this guy can do it to this guy. But this guy can't sell, give, bargain away the right to use this guy's land. Only he can do that, okay? Important to know too, we'll get off this real quick and we'll go back to licenses. Again, remember I told you the guy could go fishing. Even if the guy said so, he could take his family fishing, but he can't take his friends fishing. So what ends up happening? Well, let's say the guy does start allowing his friends to fish here, and he says, no more license, okay? Well, once it starts, can he stop it? Yes, the answer is yes. License can be stopped, and basically what we mean by that is, you know, it can just be, you know, just give the guy notice, and basically you know, it's a revocation. So what we're saying is the license is stopped, so we say it's revoked. Okay? So that's important. Now, going forward, sometimes you've heard different numbers involved here about easements, like the number 21 years or something like that. Well, that really has no bearing. Don't even think about these numbers. If you see that on the quiz or anything, it does not last 21 years or 20 years. Basically, it lasts forever. And the only thing is, once again, it varies from state to state. You know, what are the requirements? And so, the grantee, remember again, I want to touch on that again. The grantee is getting the benefit of an appurtenant easement or any kind of an easement. The grantee is getting to use the ground. The grantor is the guy that owns the ground, but he's allowing the grantee to use it. And, okay, so basically the grantee of the appurtenant easement is the owner of the neighboring real estate that is gaining the benefit of it. One of the things to keep in mind that is a prescriptive easement, you have to openly be doing it. That guy we were showing has to drive over that land again and again and again, and the guy sees it, doesn't do anything about it. He has to do it, more or less be notorious about it, even tell his friend, oh yeah, I'm driving onto this guy's land, you know, and be visible. So you don't do it in the middle of the night, you got to do it in the middle of the day. And then adverse, so you know you're not on your land, you know you're on the other guy's land. And so all these things are requirements that you have to be open, notorious, visible, and adverse to the real owner of the property. Remember that I said that when the same person owns both an easement and the land that the easement is on, then under the doctrine of merger, the easement becomes basically merged by the fact that the owner is also the beneficiary or the grantee of an easement. You cannot be the grantor and the grantee of an easement, so basically it's all merged together. He just owns it all. So basically, again, we've talked about licenses where the fishing is allowed or hunting is allowed. You may put a sign up that says no trespassing for hunters because you don't want them taking like a pot shot at your house, for example. Well, if you give somebody permission, they're not subject to that. So if the sign says no trespassing, the guy can still come on because he has a license. Okay, here's a scenario. Owner of a parcel A grants to the owner of parcel B an easement to use the driveway on parcel A. Okay, we did that already. Okay, owner of parcel B sells parcel B to X, or I said C. Okay, the driveway easement is automatically transferred to X, or in my case C. So anytime you sell a property that has an easement, that it's enjoying the right to an easement, then they get to go ahead and get that easement as well. The land that benefits by an appurtenant easement is known as the dominant tenement, and I covered that before. So the dominant tenement is getting the benefit. The servient tenement is giving up the benefit. Now in foreclosure that's closed by the bank before there is an express grant of an easement, the easement is terminated. So in other words, the bank doesn't get the easement. They've taken it back. So basically they're going to be stuck without a driveway in that situation. One of the problems that you get into too on these, some of these easements is, let's say that you decide, well, no, I'm not even going to do that. And so basically what I'm going to do is just go another way, and I'm not going to use this prescriptive easement anymore. Well, if you stop using that prescriptive easement and there's a long gap, basically, then it's got to be continuous. So what that means is, basically, you're in a situation where you've got to continue to use it. And so what we're looking at here is implied easements. It's another word for a kind of an appurtenant or prescriptive easement, so kind of all together, meaning that a property benefits, like I was showing you, where the guy just starts driving over the land. Well, the guys walked out there, seen it, didn't stop it, didn't put up a fence, didn't put up tack lines to blow the guy's tire, didn't do anything. Now, an important thing is, let's say we got a landlocked lot, okay? So this farmer, he owns 100 acres, okay? Well, he decides, well, I'm going to sell 5 right here, but I want all this other land for crops, okay? So this is crops, but this is 5 acres right here, and he sells it to a guy. Now, how's that guy going to get his car out to go to work, okay? So somehow they've got to work out some kind of an agreement that there is an easement, because this is what we call land locked. So any landlocked real estate has to have some kind of an easement so they can get onto their land. You can't just go on there and say, well, I'm never coming off. I mean, that's foolish. You have a heart attack, you can't come off to go to the doctor, or the hospital. So that's what we call an easement by necessity, okay? Easement by necessity. There has to be an easement for this, okay? Otherwise, the guy can't even move his furniture in there, okay? So that's why it has to be that way. Now, one of the last things I want to cover, basically with these easements in gross, where they run these big high tension wires along, they'll run them across several farmers' fields and so forth. Well, that is a form of an easement in gross. So when you get into something like that, you see what's an easement in gross. It's usually for things like utilities, okay? And that does mean that all other utilities companies, like I said, can also use that, okay? Well, hey, we've covered some things. I know we've kind of flew through this, but I'm trying to avoid making these too long. So I'm trying to shorten them up as much as I could. So I hope you got some benefit from this. If you have any questions, you can always get a hold of me at robdawalt@me.com. Thanks for watching.